Welcome to Processing Purpose, a business and lifestyle podcast committed to having honest conversations about the stuff in our lives that is often suppressed, ignored, or overlooked. We are two brothers from very different backgrounds, but with one common goal. From entrepreneurship to relationships, from hobbies to house projects, nothing is off limits as we process becoming the best version of ourselves in business and life.
We're back.
Hey, in unison.
That was actually in sync, which...
Next time we got to go in sync?
Yeah.
In sync and in harmony.
Who was your favorite member of NSYNC?
I don't even
Did
know.
I just expose you?
In sync.
Yeah, we came from that era, though, didn't we?
Yeah,
Wow,
Backstreet Boys, In Sync. The first was New Kids on the Block. I remember that in elementary school. Yeah.
I was going to...
Was that Step by Step?
I don't-
Step by
Step.
I don't
Day by... That's a show.
know.
We're ruining it.
I
All
don't
right.
know.
Okay, we're talking about...
And everybody just turned us off.
irrelevant noise. But no, we actually are pretty excited about this topic today. Just literally started chatting about it moments ago.
37 seconds ago.
Yeah, but it's interesting because, I came in with really no topic. I didn't really think too much of it, but it's just interesting how each one of us every time has something on our heart or maybe something we're going through that we each can lean into pretty seamlessly, which is really cool. So I appreciate that about you. What are we talking about? What's our topic today?
Generically, balance.
Balance, rhythm.
Yeah, it's kind of a, is it buzz? I don't know. It's one of those trendier topics to talk about a work-life balance, right? And that you got to find that balance to have happiness.
Right.
And I think that, there's some truth to that, and we'll kind of go into, understanding what that even means and that it can mean different things to different people. Work-life balance does not look the same for everybody.
No.
But the reason why this topic was kind of top of mind for me right now is that I've been grinding. And I took a bit of a pivot. We alluded to it last episode. I got back from Japan. And really I've got 2 weeks before my next trip. Had 2 weeks. I've got, I leave today, going up to Mission Ridge for the weekend. And then I fly out to Texas on Sunday, and I'm gone through the whole week. And so for the month of February, I think I've been home 10 days. And so there's a bit of it's been a lot.
Right.
It's been a lot.
Right.
And for these 2 weeks that I've been home, I've had to catch up from being gone from Japan and then try and get a few things in motion for my trip to Texas.
Right.
And it's been a lot. I've been in the office 7, 8 a.m. every day, and I'm not coming out till 6 p.m. And I'm taking a half hour for lunch.
That's a long day. That's an
a
11-hour
long
day with a short lunch.
And while I recognize people work long hours, like 10 hours, 12 hours, those are long hours, don't get me wrong. My working for those hours is homed in. There's no talk around the water cooler. There's no getting distracted with, watching YouTube videos. It's I'm on.
Right.
For those. So I walk out of the office fried.
And I want to make clear, not to beat others up, but the truth is most employees, if you are currently an employee, there are outliers, but most give about 50% effort. And that's not a dig. That's just where our society is. So what Luke's talking about is when you work in that capacity, it doesn't feel as stressful. There are going to be stressors that come along, but when you're under 11 straight hours of massive stress on your shoulders because you're so intentional about what you're doing and paying attention to detail, it just drains you. It absolutely drains you.
Yeah, I think the statistic, and I'm just going to stereotype it, so, don't take it personally, but the statistic, I think, for an average 8-hour workday is 3 hours of work.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah. And for most people,
yep.
They got 3 hours of work done in 8 hours.
And it's amazing how helpful that 3 hours is. Now, if you can create a culture that everyone works maybe 5, whoa.
Right.
I mean, talk about the productivity is way up. And, people aren't robots and they're not slaves either. They need time. They need to breathe. They have thoughts of their own, that sort of thing.
Total tangent. If you think we switched to a 5-hour workday, and it was look, you're going to work for 5 hours. but you're going to be on for 5 hours. Do you think that people would go and be on for 5 hours knowing they only had to work for 5?
Yes and no. Yes, I think philosophically, yes. I think people have the capability of doing so.
Well, capabilities.
Now, will people actually stay focused for that amount of time? In our society now, with how fast food everything is, right? Like instant gratification. If I'm not getting it here, I'm going to move here so I can get it from my phone. There's so much of that going on right now. I don't know if it's possible, not probable.
Yeah.
Is the best way to say
it.
it.
It was just a random
No, I love it.
Side thought.
Along the lines with Tim Ferriss, right? 4-hour work week. Can you focus so much that you can get the same amount done in a smaller amount of time? I've done it before, so I know it's possible.
Yeah.
Right? When you don't – and the crazy part is he frames it in a little bit different way into where you don't have a choice. That's all you have.
Yeah.
So if you have to get 8 hours of work done in 30 minutes and that's all you have to do it, you've proved it. I guarantee you have about 4 weeks of work you're getting done in an 11-hour day. It's like you're squeezing everything down that usually takes you a lot longer to do.
The amount that I've gotten done in the last 2 weeks has been a lot. I launched a completely new brand in 2 weeks. So I created the company name, got logos done, built the website, created the product, build all the back-end systems, created the automations for communication, build the ad campaigns, did all the creatives. Like I did all of it.
What did you do? No, that is amazing. And here's another question. I'm going to back it up a little bit farther and say, not only are people capable of this, but should we design our lives this way? Should we design our lives to work super duper hard for 1 or 2 weeks a month and then take 2 to 3 weeks off every month?
Like is there sprints almost?
Boom. And the consistency piece we know in business really does matter. And so there's a lot of even minutia that needs to be kept up on. And if you have somebody in the world that can do that during those weeks.
Yeah.
But in terms of balance and why we say it's different for everybody is for some people taking 2 weeks off would not be a good thing. You need to stay engaged for some reason.
Yeah.
But for others, I'm going to be honest, for me, that would be money. I would love to work super hard for 2 weeks out of the month and then take 2 weeks off. If I could design it that way, I feel like I'm getting closer to that. Not where I want to be, but I want that to be my reality. And not necessarily the way I see it too. And it's funny, people have said over and over to me, elders have told me that retirement is a slow death. And so if I'm taking time off, it's not really time off. What I'd want to do, you're going to laugh, but I'm dead serious. I want to take that 2 weeks and fill the gaps with taking clients out on the water and fishing with clients and friends and growing my portfolio through other passions of mine, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
What does work-life balance mean to you? What does it look like for you right now with your family and with your job? Like what does that, when I say that, what do you envision?
Right now it feels good. Right now I feel like I have a really good, this whole winter actually, I felt like I'm finally in a place where everyone understands my role. I'm executing on my role. Things are coming together within my lane, and that feels really good. I feel like I'm bringing value to the fold, so I feel like I'm finally finding identity in it, and that feels really good. At home, right now this season, we get a lot more, I don't want to say time off, but we get time with family because there's just not as much activity going on. We stayed pretty consistent throughout the winter, but we are gearing up for go time. And we've learned over the last 10 years with real estate, you have to get really comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to know that when those moments come, like February, very low in sales, very low in activity. So you start to see your bank account because your expenses are the same, or maybe in some circumstances going up because you're having to do big marketing blasts to get all that stuff going for the listing season. And so it's a bit of I hope this works. But, you know, at the end of the day, you've got to force yourself in this lane, at least in this industry, to take that time for refinement, get some rest, get ready for
because you're gonna run.
You're gonna run. So starting in this year, it's actually probably gonna start earlier for us because of the weather. Weather always dictates our season. So usually we start kicking off in late March. It starts to really ramp up. April and May are like go time, and then June actually stays really busy too. But this year it may start soon. We may actually start here in the next week or two. Start seeing. We already are. We're getting people asking us to come out for CMAs, and which is a comparable market analysis of their home. So right now, anyway, we feel really good. We're in a good rhythm. And I say rhythm and I want to bring that up. I had a friend of mine. I was talking about work-life balance, and he looked at me, and this is an interesting philosophy. He just said, I don't think balance is what we're looking for. I think it's rhythm, and understanding that life comes with rhythms. And what he was saying was, sometimes there's a rhythm of work, and sometimes you just have to work and grind and get after it. And then there's going to be a rhythm of rest, and there's going to be a rhythm of work, right? And so we see it as this kind of balancing measure, but really, if you look at it, life just does this a lot.
It does.
And we're not in a lot of ways even able to balance it ourselves. It just, the stuff comes when it comes. Like we've talked about in the last couple episodes, stuff can change in a heartbeat. So even as hard as we try, we don't have a lot of controls over some of that stuff. And actually, I even started complaining about myself not getting enough social balance to Brooke. Like, man, I feel like you're always hanging out with your friends, going out with the girls, getting wine, doing all this. Like, I want to hang out with my guys. And she looked at me. My wife's amazing and very unapologetic when it comes to whininess. She said, well, plan it. Like, I don't plan your social stuff. Like, if you want to go hang out with your friends,
put it on the calendar.
Yeah, go to trivia night, do something. I don't know. And that's honestly what stirred me up to put on the barbecue class last fall. And that's why I was like, fine, you're right.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
Of course I need to facilitate this. And men generally are not as good at facilitating, group hangout events. We just aren't. And so, but we can get better at it. We can do better. And so I will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's this, and there's a couple of ways to look at this work-life balance equation. And it is an equation. If you're a 9 to 5, 50 weeks out of the year person, finding that rhythm is going to look very different.
Right.
Than you, who's 6 months on, 6 months off, and me, who goes 4 months on, 1 month off, 4 months on, 2 months off, right? Whatever that math is there.
Right.
It's going to be, and that's why I started by saying, like, look, what it looks like for me is going to be very different than what it looks like for you, even than what it looks like for a listener. I went out and had a drink with a buddy last night. Another buddy from California came up, and he's a radiologist. He's a pediatric radiologist in San Diego. And he said that he works 180 days a year and gets 185 off. And I was like, well, I mean, that sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good. But my point is, his balance is different.
Right.
Right? His ebb and his flow, his grind looks different. And the reality is, as an entrepreneur, which is really where I think most of our thoughts come from,
right?
There's going to be seasons where you're fully out of balance. And fighting to be in balance will only increase the stress.
You got to realize it's temporary and it will pass.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I'm sitting here, and I don't know if the cameras can pick it up. I don't know if you can pick it up in my voice. I'm smoked.
You walked in and I literally looked at you. I was like, you ready to do this? You looked like, I'm super tired, dude.
I am tired. I need a deviation. Like,
yep.
And becoming aware of what your body's telling you is important in the seasons of grind, because that's where you can create other issues, like health issues.
Right.
If you're not attentive to, I'm run down, like, I've been going, like, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
Warren Buffett, I read a little, life advice thing from him, and he said your career will never, ever be more important than your mental health.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. And you could put that mental health, and you could swap it in with
physical health, maybe even
physical health or family, or like we put our, and especially as men, we put our production hat on and roll, and we just go. Right. This is what we do. And there's this time for that, and it's important. But one of the things that I've been aware of this last week is, even though I've been putting in really intentional, focused, long hours from my normal rhythm is 9 to noon, 2 to 5:30.
Right.
So I go 6.5 hours a day of work, and the rest of the time is either prep or playing with the kids or, you know, mental health or something like that. And so it's been a big shift. But one of the consequences of that this week is I come down at the end of the day at 6 p.m. or so, and I don't have anything left.
And they want it from you.
And my kids want, you know, they don't know.
Yeah.
So they're laughing and they're smiling and they're on each other. They had this whole week off of school because it's midwinter break. So they're tired of each other. They're whining and getting on each other's nerves.
Right.
And consequently, I don't have the patience to like navigate it. So I snap and I'm like,
yeah,
figure your stuff out. And like, it's a consequence of me having to grind this week. And I've had to, at dinner and other moments, be like, look, guys, this week I'm grinding and I'm sorry if I'm impatient and I'm grumpy. Like, this isn't going to be the way it is. And I need
communication
to get a few
is
things.
key.
It's setting expectations, whether that's with your family or your spouse or your employees or your clients. It's the only way. I did a client presentation yesterday, and I was talking about something called the trust continuum. And maybe we'll do an episode on it at some point. But the only way you build trust with somebody is to set an expectation and meet it. And if you can exceed it, you increase the trust factor.
Absolutely.
But if you don't meet it, that's where trust erodes. But setting proper expectations that you can fulfill and over-delivering whenever possible, that's how you build trust with people. And it's the same thing with the kids and your wife and your community and your neighbors and
maybe even yourself. Can you trust yourself? You've set intentions, expectations. Can you fulfill them for you? That might be the biggest question of all, you know? I think a lot of us will find ways to come up with excuses as to why we're not pushing the ball forward. We talked about it this morning. And the truth is, yes, you may be in a 9-to-5 scenario that may not allow you to have the same kind of work balance in your life. But I also am becoming, and we talked about it a little bit this morning too, but becoming really heartbroken for men who are in that scenario and A, feel like there's no way out.
Yeah.
And B, feels like they don't have a say in it. And 3, they don't get to complain about any of it because you have to show up every day and you have to provide. And that's your job and that's your purpose in life. And, you know, and I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying when we're reduced to those measures as men, it's deflating and it can feel really depressing, you know, that you're just living in this world of expectations that you didn't necessarily create for yourself. But I just want to remind you that there is support for you. There are other men who feel the same way you do. And I think I'm kind of going on another tangent here, but I really think it's time for men to lean into men and embrace one another and make sure that your voices are heard, you're seen, you're felt, all those things. Because I'm seeing it. I'm seeing work-life imbalance show up not only by way of time spent, but by way of intention of that time. Meaning when men take time off now, I don't think it's to fill the cup. I think it's to escape.
What's the difference between filling your cup and escaping?
You know, doing anything that's purposeful or that brings you life versus finding the bottom of a bottle or finding, you know, I think it's turning to alcoholism. It's turning to drug abuse. It's turning to maybe even domestic violence in some cases. Going down an extreme path here, but I think we're seeing it. And I think we're calling it work-life imbalance, but I think it's actually a little bit deeper than that. Yeah. I think work-life imbalance is starting to turn into less purpose in life. You know, we talked about it before. We're not necessarily going down a road of saving men here, but you know, suicide in men is up 5x in the last 15 years. That's huge. And so that's why I think when we talk about, and listen, women out there as well, you're going through stuff as well. I'm not suggesting that men are the only ones.
We're just not qualified to talk on it.
Right. And so, but I am all around me, my friends. I can speak specifically to some, but I'm not. I'm watching it happen before my very eyes. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking. And so, you know, I think to get to a point where you feel like you can get back to balance, it may start with a conversation with another man who feels the same. Finding support, finding a little bit of maybe purpose together to
Mm-hmm.
start rewriting what life could look like for you. Look, and I'm saying because a lot of men have big visions and big dreams, but you cannot see farther than 6 inches in front of you when you're under stress.
Yeah.
When you're feeling that pressure and those expectations, you don't have vision. You can't see beyond anything else. And I want them to, because I feel like there's people out there with huge visions and dreams and can't ever get to that point because of those shackles that are holding them down.
Expectations for yourself. That's an interesting concept. I'm not sure. I know I have spoken to it in those terms. The expectations I put on myself. It's not language that you hear. The expectations that we put on ourselves. I think more often we hear about the expectations that others put on us. Which is kind of what you alluded to there, the expectation of being a man and the provider or what have you. But I think the expectations that we put on ourselves, certainly for me, that's an interesting lane, because I am for sure my worst critic.
Sure.
I have incredibly high expectations of what I can accomplish, generically in this life. And
what you're capable of.
What I'm capable of.
Yeah.
And there's some dissonance between, what you actually execute on and what you're capable of. And that creates discomfort and self-doubt. And there's some things in there, and that's a whole nother thing to unwind. But when you said expectations, what flashed for me is that this week I'm taking a bit of a dice roll this week. And I am, I'm trusting my gut. I'm putting my cards on my intuition right now. And I'm going to see just how emotionally intelligent my intuition is.
Okay.
So
This will be a fun test to see it unfold.
Yeah. So my current company, moving forward, doing fine. I'm ready for a change. We've talked about that. And so I was in the process in December, January, of putting some of those pieces in place to take my company to the next step.
Putting other measures in place.
To mitigate some future issues that I saw. Some new products that we were going to launch, some new entry products for people, so on and so forth. And I went to Las Vegas just before I went to Japan. I got invited to a special invite only type thing for some business owners there, and I was sitting down with the guy that was kind of organizing it, and he was like, "Look, you need to shift your industry a little bit here," and so. That prompted with something that I was already kind of feeling like I want to make a pivot and I want to go in a different direction. And so this week, these couple of weeks here between Japan, I did some planning on the plane, long flights, 10-hour flights. So did some planning on the plane in between movies. And so I could hit the ground running this week. But this week I'm shelving everything. These couple of weeks I've shelved everything for moving Cascade Conversion forward. And I have focused 98% on this new project, which is why I was able to build a brand from scratch and get it all up and going. But I'm seeing whether or not my intuition to follow the energy. I saw a little video from Rob Dyrdek, and he was talking about chasing energy. He was talking about becoming energy aware.
It's like Green Lights with Matthew McConaughey.
Yep. He was talking about becoming energy aware so that you follow where the energy leads. When you do something, is it giving you energy? Is it taking away energy? And becoming aware of that so that you can follow where the energy leads. And his whole thing was it's a path to happiness. But for me, this week has been about chasing the energy. And my energy was to start this new project and see where it goes. I have no idea if it is going to have legs at all. I'm just trying to grind something out so I can push play and see what's actually going to happen.
Right.
But it's going to be interesting setting that expectation of what I should be creating for Cascade aside to create something based on where my energy was going,
Right.
to see where it goes. And that was an intuition. That was a gut level decision. Be interesting to see whether or not that was the right move.
I'm excited for that. Ron across the hall, branding expert. He owns a branding company called Norse Creative. Where was I going to go with that? See, lost my train of thought.
Well, as expectations and creating a brand and
lost it. That's all right. The one thing I do want to, it's all right.
It'll come back to you.
It'll come back to me. This happens to us once in a while. But I do want to share something that was originally on my mind too, and I shared it with you in message. And it'll challenge what we originally said about surrendering the outcome, right? Surrendering the expectation. And this gentleman I listened to, and again, you'd have to know who he was and his background. I can get into all that, but I won't. But he said there's essentially 3 things you need to be successful. And it just reminded me of what I was going to say. So intention, attention to detail, and expectation for the outcome. We've talked about not having an expectation for the outcome, right? We actually, I think a few episodes ago, talked about just do whatever you're doing to the best of your ability and leave all the rest behind. Like that, just do that and everything else will work itself. The outcome will come. But this gentleman really frames it in a different way and said everything we do as human beings are framed within those three realities. You have to have intention to do anything. You have to really get down to the minutia and the details to make it great. And you have to have some sort of vision as to what this is going to look like in the future. Will it play out exactly that way? Maybe not. But if you don't have that expectation, he claims it most likely will not happen.
Well, see, and I would push back on what our conversation has been leading up to this moment. Not that you should not have an expectation for the outcome, but that you shouldn't attach your identity and whether you won or lost or your emotional health to the outcome. That's really what I mean by that when I say surrender the outcome, is not that you don't have an intention of where you're going or a hope of a destination or an expectation of a result. That is absolutely fundamental to motivating the action that it takes to get there. So he's 100% right, and I don't think it's in conflict with what we've been saying.
You're saying surrender your emotions to the outcome.
I'm saying surrender this only is a win if I reach that outcome side of it.
Right. And to piggyback on what Ron was saying or he at least created a brand called In Case of Success, and I love it. His whole ethos there is everyone plans for disaster, right? Always plans for worst case scenario, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I'm just saying, or he's at least saying, have you planned for success? What happens if this works? What happens if this takes off in a way that you thought it could? You know? And so I bring that up because as you're trying this, and who knows if your intuition's right, what if it is?
Yeah.
What are you going to do if it is? Are you ready for that? Are you ready for success?
Ready for that. I am ready to make. I've been ready to make a bit of a pivot, and I've been blessed with the company that we have and the staff and the employees, and you know, if any of them happen to be listening, like I've got nothing but love for everything that we've created, but my heart has moved on probably a year and a half ago.
Sure.
And so me trying to gear up and motivate myself to continue to put energy forward. Here was the rub. When we built Cascade, I always knew it was temporary. It was never going to be the thing.
It's a stepping stone to the next thing.
It was simply a stepping stone. And so I had never, coming back to expectations, I had never set the expectation that this was going to be something that I was going to do.
Right.
Like forever or, you know, for an extended period of time. It was always just yeah, this is a good stopgap. This is where the green lights are right now.
Right.
And
I know how to do this. I can do it well. Yep.
And so this is where we're going to go. But I punched that ticket. And, you know, we talked about trying to sell companies and do different things, and that didn't follow through. And so I told you about how, you know, last couple of years it felt like a slog, just trying to move through things, and I'm ready for success in a new lane.
Cool.
So
I'm excited for you.
I'm really hopeful.
You know me, I'm a positive guy, but I really feel like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I really feel like your time is now, and I'm going to be really excited to see it happen. Watch it. Watch
It'll be
it
fun.
unfold.
Building.
And say your time is now. You've already had great success in your life. It's not like
My time is every day.
yeah, it's not like you're waiting for this hockey stick moment, but kinda.
Yeah.
You know, kinda. I think you've grinded enough and you have the skill sets, and I think the moment that momentum hits, the cool thing is like we've listened to what's his name that started acquisition.com, is all of your experiences up to this point have readied you for that moment.
Yeah.
So that when the momentum hits, someone like me that's still kind of training in those ways and learning in those ways, you're going to be so prepared for when it hits because you're going to be trained for it. You know, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Be like, all right,
yep,
here we go. Let's go.
You're steady Eddie. That's you know, I've talked to a few friends that have become very successful in business, and that seems to be the common denominator is steady Eddie, right? Someone that can just analyze and not get emotional, right?
Yeah.
I hope to get there one day.
and maybe not, because it's, look,
you
have a skill set that I don't, right? And for me to sit here and go, man, I hope I can become a hype guy like Gavin. I hope I can become an idea guy like Gavin. I hope that I can bring the energy to the room like Gavin. That's not necessarily a realistic expectation for me.
Sure. So do that the other way doesn't make sense.
So
either.
to do that the other way, I think it would be like you having to sit down and do Excel spreadsheets. Like, holy shoot yourself. You know, you would just be like, no, just end it.
Even to the point where I'll scan and analyze spreadsheets, and I can understand them.
You have to.
I
as
am
a business
educated.
owner. Yeah.
But to the point where I'm still at a point where I'd rather have someone just explain what's on the spreadsheet sheet to me instead of even having to read it.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So to think that you're going to get to a point, and there will be some tempering of your enthusiasm as you live life and have wins and have failures, and you may not be as high and as low. You find a little bit different rhythm.
Right.
But your skill set isn't going to be like, I can get in and grind.
No, in fact, I took it's called the energy leadership assessment, something like that. Don't quote me on that. I think that's right. But anyways, what it boiled down to is it helps you identify where your highest energies are, right? What brings you the most life, right? It helps you identify what are the activities that get me there. And for me, what it boiled down to is I'm at the height of my game. And this is why, I'll share that I've kind of put it out there that I'd like to start coaching, and I got a really, really good response.
Life coaching.
Right. And so, God, I keep losing my train of thought. But anyway, dang it.
Well, and I was so into it. You're going to ask me to pick up and where you left off, and I'm like, well, I don't know what to say next. You were the one talking.
I know, and I just think, I think, the energy leadership assessment. So finding that for me, my highest energy is when I am in relationship, and the only measure of outcome is the relationship itself.
Wow.
Right? That's where I'm at my highest game. And I thought, oh man, and it helped me actually realize that coaching might be something to think about. I just didn't feel like I was really ready for it for some reason. Didn't know why, but I just didn't feel that way at the time. But all to say is lean into that, whether it be that assessment or any other. Take that step forward in your life. Learn a little bit more about yourself. Take your DISC assessment. Take your Enneagram.
Yeah.
Find out what brings you life. What are those things? What are those lanes that get you there? Because ultimately, that's gonna help you achieve the highest energy, best work-life balance ever.
Yep.
Because you're in flow most of the time.
Yeah. So I think there's a balance between taking the assessments, right, and understanding what the assessments tell you. That's intellectual knowledge.
Right.
And becoming what Rob Dyrdek was talking about as energy aware. Like, those two things have to align. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to intellectually know, like, okay, yeah, I'm good here. This is my, you can take Strengths Finder. There's so many of those tests, right? It's another thing to observe it in action and go, wow, that was a blast. I had fun here. Wow, this really gave me life. Wow, where did time go? If those are the things that you're saying, those are the things that are bringing you energy. Versus like, geez, that meeting went on forever. Like, oh, I got to make another phone call. or I don't want to spend time with this person, right? So
You're not in flow.
you need to having the intellectual knowledge is important, but having the real world application of that intellectual knowledge that you can build your intuition in your gut based on what you're actually experiencing in life will allow you to do that in motion and do that as you go. And you're going to be like, I need to do more of that. Oh, I need to do less of that. And follow where the pull, it's a pull, the energy. So energy is an interesting topic. I didn't think we'd end up here with a work-life balance conversation, but energy pulls you. Like and it is real.
Oh, you can feel it.
Like,
it's a feeling.
You can feel it. We've all been to a concert, a party,
New York City,
a wedding, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like, it's tangible.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'll make the hairs stand up on your arms, back of your neck. Like you can, there's a vibration to it.
And what's odd is we are all energy.
Yeah.
You know
At
what
a
I mean?
very cellular basic level, we're all energy.
So the fact that you can feel it makes a ton of sense. Why would energy not be able to feel energy? Makes a lot of sense.
You're responding to the energy that's taking place in there. So finding your thing, finding those things based on intellectual knowledge of what makes you hum, combined with the practical knowledge of, and I've experienced it this way.
Yeah.
That's where the magic is.
I got chills on the back of my neck here. I just had a huge breakthrough during this conversation. I don't want to get emotional about it, but you helped me just now, just moments ago, realize that I've subconsciously believed that if I'm not doing hard things, I'm not making progress. So I've had this weird misbelief that if it's too easy, I shouldn't do it because I'm being lazy, right? There's this correlation between not good work and too easy. And for me, I've got to get out of that mind frame, because what you're saying is very different. The moment you find that energy that's pulling you and things get into flow and it feels almost too easy because that's what you're meant to do, that's it.
Yeah.
That's purpose. That's good work.
Yeah.
It's like I've known it, but I haven't believed it this whole time.
Yeah. No, that's a great word. And there will be hard things along the way.
Yeah, totally.
Right? So just, to backstop that, just because it got hard also doesn't mean that it's exactly where you need to be also.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So both of those things are true.
Right.
But
don't
it doesn't
fight it.
have to be hard.
Right. Don't fight that flow.
You know what's interesting is that I was having a conversation. I remember where I was. I was in Boulder, Colorado. I was talking with a buddy, and I was making a comment. This is going to dovetail with what you said, and I don't remember the exact context, but I was making a comment about how growth is hard. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of growth, it's hard.
It's friction.
And he looked at me and he goes, it doesn't have to be. And I went,
and then you're also like, talk to me.
I'm like, hey, tell me how that is.
Yeah.
Because I've never experienced growth without extreme friction, resistance,
pressure.
And there's areas, right? If you're going to build your body, growth is going to be painful.
Right.
If you're going to build your emotions, your emotional health, your emotional strength, if you're going to become a different version of yourself, it's hard. That's painful. But he was saying, specifically in the context of business, he said, growing a business doesn't have to be hard. He goes, it's just a matter of finding the right thing at the right moment, and it will be easier than you think it is.
And to your point, and what we've talked about before, finding the right people.
Yeah.
Right. That's a big piece of the equation.
Yeah. So, to dovetail with what you were saying, like, if the energy's there, like this week could be categorized as hard, but I've had a blast creating. My strength is in creation. Like, the bootstrapping, the getting it off the ground, the going from ideation to execution and having an MVP, a minimum viable product or process, that's I figure things out.
You have high efficiency, so you not only know how to do it fast, but do it well and do it right.
Yeah.
And that's going through it a few times. Most people just don't have that skill set and or just aren't naturally efficient.
Well, they rely. Here's the issue that I see people do. They go, well, I don't have the skill sets to do all the things that getting a business off the ground requires. True for a lot of people. The challenge is you rely on other people to fill those gaps and then blame them when you don't get to where you want to go.
Or not willing to give them credit.
Yeah,
when it goes well.
Well, hopefully that's not the case. But
yeah.
what I have a buddy that has kept talking about the getting a project off the ground. But he's got a team and he's got another company and he's trying to leverage his team and nothing happens because he's not just out and executing himself.
Right.
He's trying to delegate and have his team do it. And there's a time and a place for that once the processes have been created. But sometimes the operator just has to get in and operate.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about energy and vision, and there's something about leadership aligning with those things and communicating in a very clear way to everybody that nobody else can.
Yeah.
It's just hard to explain. You take the true leader who really serves their crew and their group and their people the right way, you take them out of the equation. It just can't work.
Yeah.
And not because everybody else isn't capable, it's without clear directive. So that in line with work-life balance, how do we find, or let me ask this too. I'm really curious to hear your question or hear your answer. When is your work-life balance out of balance? And not so much in terms of too much work, but when there's too much life. When do you, we looked at Jerry, I forget his last name, but he talked about his family. Look, we're not going to stop flying private. That's their lifestyle. But my kids need to see me grind, man. Like,
Jesse
I'm not
Itzler.
just taking vacations. Yeah, Itzler. I'm not taking vacations every day. They need to see me hustling, climbing mountains, like doing hard things so they know how to work hard. And so how does that or what does that look like for you? Does it get too imbalanced the other way, or can it?
If I'm bored.
That's okay.
No, really.
What would cause that? What would cause boredom?
I
don't think you're bored, dude. You have so many hobbies.
I mean, what I mean is if I'm bored professionally.
Okay.
If I get bored pursuing whatever it is that I've been pursuing, like I've been kind of bored the last couple of years. And I don't mean that from a standpoint of like your kids get bored, like there's nothing to do. But I mean, like, I just felt like everything that I put energy to didn't get a return. And it creates this level of like, meh.
Yeah. Like why give energy to something else?
When I get to a meh stage, for me, I get apathetic and I start looking for distraction. And so, too much life in a work-life balance for me, meaning, I'm not doing enough work, usually isn't because it doesn't mean like I'm out fishing too much or I'm out skiing too much or I'm out adventuring too much with the kids. It usually means I'm doing things that don't matter too much, watching too many shows, spending too much time on social media. Like those are the things where I go, I am out of balance. Mm-hmm. The stuff like fishing and going skiing with my kids and going on a vacation with my wife and things like that. Like maybe I haven't lived enough life to get there, but I haven't done any of that stuff too much and been like, man, went on one too many vacations with my wife this year.
Yeah.
Like that's never happened.
You want more of it.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
So my imbalance to the life side isn't doing things that give me energy. It's doing things that are insignificant.
Purposeless work.
Yes.
Yeah. Goes back to the most would rather be, entertained than educated, right? Yep. And we find ourselves in that lane too. And you get yourself to a point, age, experience, and all that. You've learned a lot. And not to say you want to hit the coast button, but you feel that pull. You feel that pull of like, maybe I've hit my stride,
Yeah.
But we haven't, right? We know that life is just a continual.
We're made to work.
Yeah, we're made to work on ourselves and all that. But I really appreciate that you framed your work-life imbalance in a frame of purpose rather than activity and things like that. Because if you're doing purposeful good work, it really doesn't matter how much time off you take, because what you're doing matters and what you're doing counts. And that could be, listen, there's people that work 10 hours a week running nonprofits, and they're making more impact in the world than you'll ever make, in your entire lifetime, and and they will in 1 year. So there's ways to do that. I don't know what it would be for me. I think the same. I think as long as what I'm doing is purposeful, I think I'll feel good about it. But what if we were to reframe that time off for those activities, if it does start to feel that way, and say my purpose is now teaching my children, right, and raising them up. But I think for me anyway, there is some truth to what Jerry said, in that I want them to see me do hard things and grind and go through it and solve challenges and all that too. So, what do you want your work-life balance to be this year? What is your ultimate goal there?
Well, I think, you framed it well a little bit ago, saying it comes down to expectation. I think the expectation for me this year is it's going to be more work than life if I'm really getting a project off the ground. So for me this year, I think the expectation needs to be, this is going to be a year of work. Even though I would rather have a year of play and life, because I value getting something else going.
Right.
And so because of that, it's going to take a different work focus to get a new project off the ground. It just does.
Right.
And so I think for me this year, I foresee there being a bit of grind. Probably more grind than not grind.
Yeah. And you have you come to terms with that? Are you still fighting it a little bit, like, I don't want it to be that way? Or are you like, no, I'm ready to do that? That's good.
If the project is successful, I'm ready to do that. I don't want to force the project. I don't want to grind to force a project.
Right.
But if something takes off, I'll run. But I don't want to push a ball uphill.
What's a leading indicator if you feel like, man, it's not going, the energy's not there anymore? What's that lead indicator? Or is there one that's like, I just got to follow that energy, and maybe the energy is that indicator?
Procrastination. Like if I'm, well, I haven't had any problem with procrastination this week.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just been like, this is the next thing. This is the next thing. Check. Next thing. Check. Next thing. Check. If I get to a place where I'm like, I don't really want to go do this, that is key.
Right.
And again, there's seasons where you don't really want to go do this and you have to go do this. But when you're building a new project, it's the honeymoon phase of it, right? There should be nothing but enthusiasm and energy to watch this thing come to life.
Right. It's like a newborn baby.
And if it's lacking, if there's no energy to that, then why are you efforting to bring this project to life?
Amen. And I would say too, whatever work-life balance you're looking for, whatever project you're starting, just make sure that your value or values are still aligned.
Yeah.
Right? My work-life balance is always going to be centered around freedom. That's my number one value. I want the most freedom I could possibly get with still providing for my family to the best of my ability. That's kind of my ethos. So what is that for you? I know freedom's big for you as well, but I think most of us should find work-life balance around our value, right? Our top value.
Yeah. Yeah. I in an ideal world, the things that I really value are the experiences with my family. Travel, new adventures, and to do that, you have to be in a financial position. You have to go one of two ways. You either have to totally say, I'm okay with nothing, and I'm going to get a trailer and
travel around and do that.
That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
More power to you. Or you get the financial independence solved, so it's a byproduct of having more flexibility and more freedom.
Right.
I've chose the latter. And so that would be the end goal, would be like, let's get another project going so that I can have a little bit more freedom to go, experience life. We've talked about with our family wanting to go and take 3 months and live in Costa Rica to teach our family, teach our kids Spanish.
And surf and do all that.
And so you can't just pick up and go and live in Costa Rica unless you have the finances coming in to take care of your current mortgage and all the things that still have to be paid, whether you're living there or not.
Right.
And add the expense of being of the cost in a new location as well.
Right.
Right. So you have an increase in cost without a reduction in cost. And so you have to have the financial stability to do that. Well, I need another project. I got to get something off the ground. So,
Right.
But that's my foundation of like is freedom as well. It's doing what I want, when I want, with who I want, and
how I want. I'm just kidding.
that's right. Whenever I want. And so that's I think, I don't know, I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but I think that's not uncommon. Like I think
Right.
it's a pipe dream for some people. They're like, yeah, right. But I think it's definitely something that's doable.
Right.
And so that would be where I'm headed.
I love it. I think I mean, kind of puts a bow on what we've talked about today. Look, work-life imbalance for me, I will say for me it's more of a rhythm, right? Because of the season of life I'm in with my kids. There's just going to be times where they need more of me. There's going to be times where I need more myself. But I will finish with this too. I'm going to go back a few episodes and say, for me personally, I've found so much more balance in my life this whole year. I haven't even lived out the whole year yet because I've planned things out.
Yeah.
Because I've put them on the calendar and I've already said this is going to be a work-life balance year, right? I'm not going to wait for it to happen. I'm not going to hope it happens. I'm going to make it happen. And this is how I'm going to do it. Set an expectation for yourself out in the future. Now you're filling buckets. You're going places. You're doing things with your kids. You're seeing on paper what your life should and can look like, and then you execute on it. So I'd encourage you there. If you really want true work-life balance, don't wait for it to happen. Go make it happen.
Yeah, it's the big rocks.
Yeah.
Theory that we've talked about before, right?
Yep.
I mean, you got to put the big rocks in your life, otherwise your bucket's going to overflow.
Totally.
And so 100%. Yeah, I think my last thoughts is that balance is a bit of a misnomer. There's going to be, like you said, rhythms. There's going to be seasons where you're out of balance and it's time to work. And then there's going to be seasons where work's kind of dialed. And you get to spend a little bit more time doing the things that give you energy outside of your profession. And you have permission for both. Right. And you just don't want to stay in either space where it becomes unhealthy. Right. Where your health suffers, where your family suffers, those around you are taking the brunt of your lack of capacity because you're just pouring it all out somewhere else. And so being aware of that, becoming energy aware and finding those things that give you life and run.
Totally. And you have full control over your self-awareness.
Yeah.
Right. You can't control much in your life, but you can control that. So the more aware you become, the better everything gets.
Yeah. I'm really glad I didn't fall asleep in this conversation.
Me too. That would have been an awkward episode.
You thought you forgot what you were going to say.
Hey, Luke. Luke. No, but we appreciate you guys as always, and any feedback, comments are always helpful so we know what else to talk about to bring value to your lives. But thanks for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Love you.
All right, we're out.
Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to Processing Purpose. We hope you grabbed a few gold nuggets to take one step forward in your journey of life and business. Please remember to like and subscribe our channel if you'd like to get more content to help you build and grow everything around you. Make today your best day. Today is day one.